There are few titles whose names set a level of expectation so high it's nearly impossible to match the hype. I'm sure everyone can name some huge franchises, but everyone should know the name Metal Gear. This release sets out to do something a game in the series has never done, and add closure to a story that's been crafted for over 30 years. Is Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain the solid game fans deserve, or is this just a huge pain in the ass? Get it? Solid? Pain? Ugh. Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder. Today we'll be reviewing Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Just like all other releases in the series, Metal Gear Solid 5 was developed by Kojima Productions and was published by Konami. The game was written, directed, and produced by legendary game designer Hideo Kojima. It was released for the PlayStation, Xbox, and PC on September 1st, 2015, and I played the game on the PlayStation 4. Metal Gear Solid 5's gameplay continues where Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker left off, with the changed series standard subtitle of Tactical Espionage Action to Tactical Espionage Operation. This is less a change in format, but more so an addition with minor alterations. A quick summarization of the series up until Peace Walker was a strong stealth-focused, third-person action-adventure style, with a more linear plot-driven story, though exploration is always a large component of the franchise. And I'd even go as far as tacking it in with the Metroidvania-type game, where we have immediate access to various areas within the game, with more being opened up after completing various tasks or finding necessary items to open up new rooms or locations. The Phantom Pain keeps the gameplay basics like overall control, stealth, enemy intelligence, and alert systems, but instead of the smaller, isolated locations, we're put into an entire region, two in this case, that's mostly free to be explored in whatever manner the player desires. The action subtitle is definitely more story-focused and driven throughout the entirety of the games, with the operation being less dedicated to a consistent flowing story, but an overarching narrative with lots of side missions making building forces, bases, and developing gear a large facet of the overall gameplay. I'll reiterate the fact that this is indeed a Metal Gear game, so of course the story is the biggest part of the game, but how Peace Walker and the Phantom Pain are put together adds a different spin on how the narrative is presented. When we begin playing the game, we'll start out with a story mission, then after completing said mission, another will open up, but at the same time, side ops will be unlocked. The story missions is obviously titled Progress the Events of the Game's Story, and side ops are mostly focused on army and base building mechanics that I'll get into a little more momentarily. The side ops are pretty optional, again as I said, mostly building Big Boss's army and resources, but there are a sprinkling of heavy story moments that actually hold a lot of significance with the entire timeline of the series. To state Metal Gear Solid 5 as a game with a lot of content is a severe understatement. Besides the story missions, the side ops are overwhelming in comparison. If you're a completionist, then be prepared for 157 side missions. The focus in the Phantom Pain, besides the narrative itself, takes place while our main protagonist, Big Boss, aka Snake, is rebuilding his paramilitary forces, and the gameplay reflects this pretty well. We'll eventually begin with an offshore command center, and as we gain more resources and soldiers skilled in combat, development, and reconnaissance, we'll be able to expand our base and its available operations. Here we'll make better use of gained resources to unlock more weapon types, armors, and eventually we'll be able to deploy small squads to perform unattended combat missions to gain additional resources and staff. Staff building is a large part of the base building. While we're playing through the missions or side ops, we'll have different means of completing objectives. For those who want balls to the wall action, the best plan of attack is going to be making use of heavy firepower and the run and gun take no prisoners approach to everything. The major downside to this is by dispatching enemy combatants, leaves less enemy soldiers to be recruited into our forces. The more classical Metal Gear approach is using a stealth option, sneaking into enemy locations using non-lethal methods. As I said, the benefit to this is we can now use a Fulton device or an escape balloon to capture enemy soldiers that can be sent back to Mother Base to be recruited into the Diamond Dog forces. Metal Gear games have always had a large amount of weapons and tools to be used to assist in whatever missions, but the Phantom Pain takes this to another level. As more R&D staff are recruited, and even design plans found while on missions, we'll gain access to a massive amount of weapons that range from lethal to non-lethal, allowing us to really focus on a playstyle suited for each individual. Besides weapons, there's various placeable items like mines and decoys, and basic equipment to make life easier such as night vision goggles and Fulton devices. Besides the gear I've already mentioned, Snake won't have to face all these challenges alone. Throughout the story, we'll be able to recruit the help of a canine companion D-Dog, a supernaturally enhanced sniper Quiet, and even make use of a faithful steed, D-Horse. While playing through the story missions, the relationships between Snake and these companions will grow, opening up more options to make use of their skills to better assist on missions. Unlike previous games in the series, we can now capture a variety of vehicles to make use of, from jeeps to tanks and even personalized Metal Gear units called Walker Gear. To top all this variety off is we can choose to customize our base, what gear our companions use, and even repaint vehicles and design logos to suit our tastes. Now, I can't talk about Metal Gear Solid 5 without mentioning the chopper transport. Keeping everything very immersive, Snake will make use of a chopper to get from place to place. We'll end up spending a lot of time with Pequot, the pilot for all of our missions, but this is mostly just being picked up and dropped off. The helicopter also serves as an aerial command center, and a lot of the base building, staff management, and gear development can be performed from here. This is a really interesting mechanic to the flow of the game, but it has its drawbacks as well. These scenes in a way act like loading screens between various places we visit, and can go on for a minute or so while being picked up or dropped off. To give an idea, with there being 50 main story missions and 157 optional side ops, there's a lot of time spent going from chopper to missions. It would have been nice if there would have been an option to choose to skip the transfer scene, but since everything in the game is done in real time, it's an unfortunate side effect to the amount of depth included in this game. Missions are handled in a chapter format. Each is treated like a standalone section, meaning when selected, we'll be whisked off to said location and will be designated to that area, instead of being able to openly explore the entire region. Side ops are more open world, where you can be dropped off at a location, but can freely explore the environment and seamlessly head to other objectives if desired. One interesting and commonly complained about element of the story missions is the credits before and after the missions itself. This kind of gives it a TV series kind of vibe, giving credits to the various game characters at the beginning and the developers at the end. It does break up the flow of the story, but with everything being as segmented as it is, I didn't really find it to be much of a bother, but I can understand why many people didn't care for it. After each main mission, we'll also be provided with a ranking determined on various aspects like stealth, deaths, alerts, and so on, giving us an idea how well we completed the objectives, besides just completing the task itself. Overall gameplay is as streamlined and well put together as any other game in the third-person action genre, if not more so than most. Controls are incredibly tight and responsive, and there's a large variety of actions from the usual Metal Gear control schemes like running, crawling, diving, knocking on objects, climbing, and so forth. Environments also have a lot of interactability with things like spotlights, power lines, and even mounted guns and mortars being usable, and in some cases destructible. Basically, it's exactly what gameplay in a Metal Gear game should be, with the whole base building mechanic added in on top of it. As I've mentioned, the play how you want style approach this game uses adds a level of freedom never seen in a game in the series, and it's pretty damn impressive. As we play through the game's locations, we'll encounter enemies armed in a variety of ways. As more and more missions are completed, enemies may gear up to counter our most used tactics. Perform assaults at night, they'll start wearing night vision. Perform a lot of headshots, they'll start wearing metal helmets. The difficulty curve of the game is pretty fair. As we progress, enemies will become more heavily armed and armored, and eventually we may even need to take on tanks and attack choppers. Using heavy stealth at one location, enemies may begin to investigate sounds or possibly areas of attack, and call in reinforcements if they suspect they are in fact under attack. I died quite often in this game, from failed stealth encounters to tank blasts or even getting sniped. Metal Gear Solid 5 takes the biggest step away from the traditional boss battles like most games make use of. Instead, throughout various points of the story, we'll encounter the Skull's Parasite unit. These are biologically enhanced super soldiers, and they can come in various forms, with some being heavily armored, while others are dead-aim snipers. Each battle will usually involve avoidance or escape when encountered, and always ups the adrenaline when they show up. We'll also face off with the series named Metal Gear Incarnation, but I'll get more into that later. The difficulty of the game is fairly provided, but engaging the Parasite unit tends to be the more challenging events of the story. If you're going for a stealth, non-lethal playthrough, expect to fail often, and die as a result. There's a few times I got particularly frustrated, but I was able to make my way through most of the time. When all else fails though, I just pull out an assault rifle with stun rounds and shoot the place up. Of course, with any game nowadays, there's online components to Metal Gear Solid 5 as well. Once we've established our bases to a certain level, we can do infiltration missions to basically infiltrate another player's base to steal resources, or even capture other players' units to add to our own. Our own bases can be attacked as well, but I never experienced this during my playthrough. There's also Metal Gear Online. That's a cooperative team third-person competitive game, but since I don't have PlayStation Plus, I can't really comment on this. This focuses on various gameplay styles like capture points and more objective-based scenarios rather than deathmatch, and from what I do know, a lot of people really do enjoy it. Before moving on, I'd like to mention that I will be talking about the story in great detail, and will be spoiling the crap out of this one, so if you'd like to skip ahead, click the annotation. It's also worth mentioning that Metal Gear Solid games contain a ton of story and dialogue, so I'm going to be hitting on the game's setup, and then just talking about the major events. Let's move on then. The story of Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, takes place immediately after the events of Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes and Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. After the events of the last game, Snake, aka Big Boss's base, had been decimated in a covert strike by the XOF forces while he was out on a rescue mission. As he was returning to the base while it was under siege, his chopper was blown up with him in it, and will eventually wake within a hospital. Here we'll learn that Snake was in a coma for 9 years. He lost his left hand, and now has shrapnel buried into his head. Hidden away from those who would want him dead, Skullface and his XOF forces that were last commanded by Snake's antagonist Cypher, Snake eventually awakes, and soon after an assassination attempt is made. Saved by another resident who calls himself Ishmael, Snake is helped to escape as an assault begins on the facility. Surviving the attack while residents and staff are executed in the search for Snake, he'll eventually face off with the man on fire and manages to elude him, then meeting up with Ocelot. Big Boss then takes on the codename of Venom Snake. From here we're tasked with rescuing former ally Kazuhira Miller, who's been captured in Afghanistan. Kaz had also been severely injured during the base attack, but had recovered much sooner and began to plant roots for the soon-to-be Diamond Dogs, the new incarnation of Snake's forces. He was attacked by the Parasite unit and was captured, then losing an arm and a leg in the process. After rescuing Kaz, Snake, Kaz, and Ocelot began building the Diamond Dogs and working towards tracking down Cypher and retribution against Skullface. From here there's a very complex, in-depth story experienced from the events we encounter, and instead of long drawn-out conversations via the Metal Gear's version of Skype calls, we'll pick up a vast amount of information from cassette recordings of important dialogue covering much of the finer details of motivations, information reconnaissance, or character interactions. And when I say vast, I mean novels worth of plot. This is definitely not unusual for the series. During the mission, Snake will face off with a supernaturally powered sniper named Quiet. After defeating her in a sniper battle, she's captured and Snake returns with her to Mother Base. Shortly after leaving, she disappears from the chopper that then comes under attack by a jet fighter. She reappears, snipes the pilot, and then puts herself back in cuffs. Returning to base, Snake has her jailed. From here the gist of the events are in tracking down information about Skullface and Cypher throughout Afghanistan, and the scheme that he seems to be involved with, all while finding clues and connections with Cypher, and intercepting resources and forces to bolster strength for the Diamond Dogs. As it goes, Skullface has a new incarnation of Metal Gear named Sahelanthropus, and it turns out he'd captured Huey to design it after the attack of the original Mother Base. Up until this point, the Man on Fire and Sahelanthropus seem to be under control of a mysterious psychic child that those involved with the series would recognize as probably being Psycho Mantis. It's at this point the psychic known as the Third Child takes control of the Metal Gear, and Snake is able to escape with Huey thanks to Pequot. Huey then spends a good amount of time under intense interrogation by Miller and Ocelot under the accusation that he was involved with a strike on the original Mother Base. It's during this time that Ocelot learns of a plot that Skullface is involved with creating a new superweapon in Africa. It's also at this point that the Diamond Dogs realize that Zero wasn't behind the Mother Base attack, and it was only the doing of Skullface. Snake begins conducting missions in Africa, tracking down clues to Skullface's new superweapon, and it's during this time that Ocelot learns about Quiet's special powers. She breathes and drinks through her skin, suspecting some sort of photosynthesis as an explanation for her lack of clothes. He recommends that Quiet join Snake on missions if he chooses. After another encounter with the Parasite unit, and finding that Skullface is definitely not pursuing a nuclear weapon, Snake is hired to take out a rebel group and discovers they are actually child soldiers. Instead of executing them, he stages their death and takes them to Mother Base. During another rescue mission, Snake discovers a hidden location known as the Devil's House, where some bizarre experiments are being conducted on people, causing strange sacs to grow on their lungs, with headphones inserted into their necks playing tapes of recorded voices. Skullface happened to be present at the time, and escapes but leaving the Man on Fire to attempt to kill Snake. Fortunately, with water on his side, Snake is able to stun the burning man, and escape when the opportunity is present. From here, Snake's next mission is to extract the child soldier's commander, White Mamba, who just happens to harbor some serious resentment towards Snake, and after a quick battle, he's captured, returned to Mother Base, and is told he can leave when he starts acting like a soldier instead of a hot-headed kid. Sometime later at Mother Base, Quiet gets into a skirmish with a bunch of Diamond Dog soldiers, nearly killing one by stabbing him in the mouth, and is sedated and taken away. Shortly after, Ocelot tells Snake that some kind of epidemic has broken out on the base, and soldiers were dying quickly, including the one that Quiet tried to kill. The soldiers are put into quarantine while Snake determines the cause, and it's found that everyone who spoke the Kakongo language was coming down with the infection. After getting the outbreak under control, Eli challenges Snake to another battle. The tensions between these two continue out through the rest of the story with many headbutting situations. Then, after another rescue mission, the Diamond Dogs learn of a possible cure for the epidemic on base, and Snake heads out to find an old man named Code Talker who is forced to work for Skullface. While making his way to the location, the female sniper parasite unit attempts to intervene, but Snake is able to secure Code Talker. Here we'll learn that Skullface stole the research regarding his vocal cord parasite that spreads by language, and Skullface's plot was to essentially wipe out all language from the world. Code Talker speaks of a similar vocal cord parasite that can neutralize the effects of the parasites. It's at this point the chopper is caught in a cloud of corrosive dust and crashes, with the parasite unit waiting for them. This time there's no escape, but fortunately after an intense battle the unit is defeated, and within a couple days the outbreak is stopped, but those already showing signs of infection were not able to be saved. Miller, leading the charge for revenge, tracks down Skullface's location, and Snake is sent in, though his mission is to capture and not kill Skullface, which of course ends up causing Snake to be captured. Here we get a villain moment, and Skullface provides a lot of pertinent information. We'll learn he's been involved with Zero long before Snake's initial mission, and he was in fact attempting to use the parasite to ethnically cleanse the world of the English language, effectively destroying Zero's plan and make the entire world suffer a phantom pain. He'd then provide all nations with nuclear weapons which would ultimately be controlled by Sahelanthropus. Skullface commands the Man on Fire to take care of Snake, but the third child then decides to use Eli's intense hatred instead of Skullface or the Man on Fire's to steal Sahelanthropus. The Man on Fire is then crushed by the Metal Gear's platform, and Sahelanthropus, under the control of Eli through the third child, begins to rampage. In the chaos, Skullface is caught in collapsing wreckage and begins to pursue Snake. Here the battle with Metal Gear takes place, and with the support of the Diamond Dog supply drops, Snake is able to destroy the weapon. Snake and Miller then go to finish off Skullface, and find that there are 3 parasite vials, but one is missing. The remaining vials are destroyed, and Snake begins to shoot off Skullface's limbs, reflecting the injuries Miller received, and leave him to die. Huey steps in and finishes him off. From here there are many different significant events wrapping up the story arcs in Metal Gear Solid 5, and filling in the holes leading up to the events of the original Metal Gear. The Sahelanthropus remains are captured by the Diamond Dogs, and during the wrap-up reconnaissance of Skullface's plans, Eli, with the third child's power, steals Sahelanthropus. It's then confirmed that Eli is a product of the Les Enfants Terribles project, and much of his rage comes from being a clone of Big Boss. The Mammal Pod, which housed the AI version of the boss during the events of Peace Walker, is found and secured by Snake. It's then discovered that the body of Strangelove is found inside. A second outbreak on Mother Base occurs, and the previous antidote doesn't work. Snake takes it upon himself to kill all the infected soldiers, and during the funeral afterwards, he decides not to let the soldiers' lives go for naught, and decides that all soldiers of Diamond Dogs will wear diamonds made of their fallen allies' ashes. During the second outbreak, Huey had tried to get involved, calling Snake a butcher, in one last attempt to convince the Diamond Dogs of his building lies. He goes on trial for the previous attack that destroyed the first Mother Base, working with Eli, the murder of his child's mother Strangelove, and causing the second outbreak. Huey is exiled from base and sent out to sea. Ocelot then informs Snake that Quiet has disappeared from base, and Miller insists Snake kill her for knowing too much. Code Talker then tells Snake that Quiet has the missing parasite vial used on her, and was sent as an assassin by Skullface to kill Snake if the hospital assassination attempt failed. Though Quiet's growing respect and love for Snake, she instead chose to remain silent to prevent the English parasite strain from getting loose. She's captured by Soviet forces, and Snake saves her and they fight off a massive force while trying to escape. When they have a break from combat, they attempt to escape and Snake is bitten by a cobra. Due to a sandstorm and incoming Soviet forces, Pequod is unable to locate Snake without ground assistance, and in fear of him dying, Quiet uses the walkie to help Pequod find Snake, where she then disappears, leaving a message for Snake as a goodbye. From here, the true bombshell is dropped. We learn that Venom Snake is not really who we thought he was. He was a medic present during the chopper explosion that incapacitated him and Big Boss. To protect Big Boss, the medic underwent cosmetic surgery and was effectively brainwashed to believe he was Big Boss, in order to protect the real Big Boss, who is actually Ishmael, and the assassin who tried to kill Venom Snake was actually Quiet before she was infected with the parasite. All this ruse for the real Big Boss to successfully protect himself and escape from Cypher, where he then went to begin building Outer Haven. Venom Snake continues to let the world believe he is Big Boss, and eventually starts the uprising at Outer Haven under the real Big Boss's orders to go after the Patriots. We also learned that towards the beginning of the events of Phantom Pain, Skullface had successfully located Snake and Zero due to torturing Paz, and that led to the assassination attempt on Snake, and Skullface in successfully poisoning Zero and putting him into a vegetative state. Ocelot and Miller had both also been brainwashed to forget the elaborate ruse, and with their memories returning they split on ideals. Ocelot wished to continue to support Big Boss's plan, and continues to help Venom Snake, and eventually Eli. Miller was enraged with the deception, and eventually leaves and trains Solid Snake. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain was an impressively ambitious game. Besides the usual mind-bending stories that Hideo Kojima crafts, this entry in the series sets to push the boundaries of what a Metal Gear game can achieve. The explorable world is absolutely massive, and there is so much depth in the gameplay and mechanics, this game is almost overwhelming at times. The visuals in this game, graphics and cinematography, are some of the best I've seen yet. When I first rode into Afghanistan as Venom Snake along with Ocelot, I just stopped for a moment with how impressed I was with the graphics. I haven't played a ton of top-end, current-gen games yet, but this one really made me understand the difference between the PlayStation 3 and 4. Characters are incredibly well detailed, and most of the time they seem really natural in movements and personality. Of course, one of the most important pieces to believably real characters are the voice actors involved in a Metal Gear game. Voice acting in series veterans like Christopher Randolph, Troy Baker, and Robin Atkin Downes return, and new to series Stephanie Justin as Quiet and James Horan as Skullface do amazing jobs. The elephant in the room here is of course the voice actor of Snake. For those who might not know, the most famous voice actor in Metal Gear is David Hayter. He's been voicing the Snake character throughout the entire series, from Solid Snake Young and Old, and Big Boss as well. There was a lot of controversy over Kiefer Sutherland being chosen to voice Snake in this game instead of David Hayter, and I won't get into that, but initially I was pretty upset about this, though I really gotta say Kiefer Sutherland did an excellent job as Venom Snake. One thought on the matter as far as story canon goes, it's not too unbelievable for Big Boss at this point to sound slightly different than Snake has always sounded. He's older now, and it was practically blown up, but that might just be my own justifications for the change. It was always in the back of my mind that this wasn't David Hayter, but Kiefer Sutherland is an entirely worthy successor. The Metal Gear soundtracks are always very well done, and the Phantom Pain is no exception. Quiet's theme, performed by a voice actor, is a touching song, especially considering the character herself and their relationship with Snake. On top of the game's original score, and Kojima being a huge fan of the 80s, loves his references and nods, and there's a pretty cool mix of 80s hits to help breathe more life into the game's setting. There's a pretty interesting variety from a-ha, The Cure, Billy Idol, Joy Division, and even more. Even though I don't really care about Game Awards, Metal Gear Solid 5 won Best Score and Soundtrack at this year's Game Awards. When information comes out about a new Metal Gear game, there's a lot of expectations behind it, and as a massive fan of the series, they were high. Fortunately, Hideo Kojima never disappoints, and the Metal Gear series is legendary for it. These may not be everyone's cup of tea, but for those who enjoy the series, this is like the icing on the cake. Not only for its incredible amount of depth with its story, but also with the gameplay, voice acting, and music. In a way, I find the Phantom Pain to be bittersweet, since this is the culmination of a story built over 30 years, and is most likely the last legitimate entry in the series due to Kojima's departure from Konami, after the company decision-makers inserted their heads right up their asses. It's seriously atrocious how Konami treated their best talent. This game puts the final pieces of the puzzle together for those entrenched in the storyline, and happily fills in new players with what they need to know. For those interested in playing this game, get ready for a wild ride and let those expectations soar high because this is an amazing game. And to Hideo Kojima, thank you for everything you've done. Hashtag a Hideo Kojima game. Thanks for checking out my review of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. What were your thoughts on the game? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked what you've seen or heard, please give the video a like, a share, and subscribe to see future videos. I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well, and I post a lot of other great game-related content there, and links are in the description. Until next time on the Game Grinder.